The blood was spreading across the white sheets like spilled wine on fresh snow, and I knew something was terribly wrong. Jace. My voice cracked as another wave of pain tore through my abdomen. The cramping had started an hour ago, but now it felt like someone was twisting a knife inside me. Jace, please. Something's wrong with the baby. My husband looked up from his phone, his face pale in the dim bedroom light. For a moment I saw genuine fear in his eyes, the same fear that was clawing at my chest, making it hard to breathe. He started toward me, his hand reaching out. Then his phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the air like a scream, and I watched as Jace's expression shifted. He glanced at the caller ID and something cold flickered across his features. "It's Mom," he said, his voice suddenly distant. "Jace, please," I gasped, doubling over as another contraction hit. "I need to get to the hospital. Now." But he was already answering the call. "Mom? What's wrong?" His voice was sharp with concern, more concern than he'd shown for me in the past hour. I couldn't hear Glenda's words, but I could hear the panic in her voice through the speaker. High-pitched, frantic, desperate. "What? Your chest? Oh God, Mom, I'm coming right now." "Jace." I screamed as he hung up the phone. "I'm bleeding. Our baby." "Mom's having a heart attack," he said, grabbing his keys from the nightstand. His hands were shaking, but not for me. Not for our child. "I have to go." The room spun around me as I watched him head for the door. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "You can't leave me like this." I sobbed, trying to stand but collapsing back onto the bed as pain shot through my core. "Jace, I'm losing the baby." He paused at the doorway, his back to me. For one desperate moment I thought he would turn around. I thought he would choose us. "Call an ambulance," he said without looking back. "I'll meet you at the hospital after I check on Mom." The front door slammed shut and I was alone. Alone with the blood. Alone with the pain. Alone with the devastating realization that when it mattered most, my husband had chosen his mother over his wife and unborn child. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning. I didn't know that Glenda's heart attack was as fake as her tears at our wedding. I didn't know that this moment would shatter everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the man I'd promised to spend my life with. But I would learn. Oh, how I would learn. And when I did, they would both pay for what they'd stolen from me that night. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. My name is Felicia Hunter, and 3 months ago I was a different person entirely. 3 months ago I was the kind of woman who believed in fairy tales. I was the kind of woman who thought love conquered all, who trusted completely, who gave everything without question. I was the kind of woman who would have laughed if someone told me that the two people I loved most in the world were capable of such calculated cruelty. I was naive. I was trusting. I was a fool. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that night. The night that changed everything. The night I learned that sometimes the people who promise to protect you are the ones who destroy you most completely. It was October 15th, a Tuesday that had started like any other. I was 26 weeks pregnant with our first child, and despite the morning sickness that had lingered longer than expected, I was glowing with happiness. Jace and I had spent the evening painting the nursery a soft yellow. We decided to wait until birth to learn the baby's gender, wanting that moment of surprise. "Perfect," Jace had said, wrapping his arms around me from behind as we admired our work. His hands rested on my growing belly and I could feel his smile against my neck. "Just like you." I should have known then that something was off. Jace hadn't been affectionate like that in weeks. But I was so hungry for his attention, so desperate to feel connected to him again, that I ignored the warning bells in my head. We'd been married for 2 years, together for 4, and lately something had shifted between us. He'd become distant, distracted, always on his phone. When I asked about it, he'd brush me off with excuses about work stress or wedding planning for his cousin's upcoming ceremony. I told myself it was normal, that pregnancy was hard on both partners, that he was just adjusting to the idea of becoming a father. I told myself a lot of lies back then. That night I'd gone to bed feeling hopeful. The nursery was nearly finished. My latest ultrasound had shown a healthy, active baby, and Jace had seemed more like his old self. I fell asleep with his hand on my stomach, dreaming of the family we were about to become. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to wetness between my legs. At first I thought I'd wet myself, an embarrassing but common pregnancy symptom. But when I turned on the bedside lamp and pulled back the covers, my heart stopped. Blood. So much blood. The cramping started immediately after, as if my body had been waiting for me to notice. Sharp, rhythmic pains that stole my breath and made me double over in agony. "Jace," I whispered, shaking his shoulder. "Jace, wake up." He stirred but didn't open his eyes. "What time is it?" "Something's wrong," I said, my voice getting stronger as panic set in. "I'm bleeding. We need to go to the hospital." That got his attention. He sat up quickly, his hair sticking up at odd angles, his eyes wide with sleep and confusion. "What do you mean bleeding?" I pulled the covers back further, showing him the evidence. His face went white. "Oh God," he breathed. "Hey, let me get dressed. Can you walk?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure. The cramping was getting worse, coming in waves that left me gasping. I managed to get to my feet and stumbled to the bathroom, where I discovered the bleeding was even heavier than I'd thought. This was bad. This was very, very bad. "Jace." I called out, my voice echoing off the bathroom tiles. "Hurry." I heard him moving around the bedroom, opening drawers, muttering to himself. I gripped the bathroom counter and tried to breathe through another contraction. "The baby. Please God, let the baby be okay." That's when his phone rang. The sound made me freeze. Who would be calling at 2:30 in the morning? My first thought was that something had happened to one of our parents, and despite my own crisis, I felt a stab of worry. "Mom." I heard Jace answer, his voice sharp with concern. I couldn't make out Glenda's words, but I could hear her voice through the phone, high-pitched, frantic, sobbing. My mother-in-law was not a woman who cried easily. In the 2 years I'd known her, I'd seen her shed tears exactly twice. Once at our wedding, though I later wondered if those were tears of joy or something else entirely, and once when her elderly cat had died. "What?" "Slow down, Mom. What's happening?" Another wave of pain hit me and I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. "Jace," I called out weakly. "Please." But he was completely focused on the phone call now. I could hear him pacing in the bedroom, his voice getting more agitated. "Your chest? How bad? Did you call 911? My heart sank. A heart attack. Glenda was having a heart attack. I understood in that moment that I was about to face the worst night of my life completely alone. Because I knew Jace. I knew how devoted he was to his mother, how she'd raised him as a single parent after his father died when he was 12. I knew that no matter what was happening to me, he would choose her. And I was right. "I'm coming right now," he said into the phone. "Don't move, don't do anything. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He appeared in the bathroom doorway, already dressed, his keys in his hand. His face was pale with worry, but not for me. "Mom's having a heart attack," he said, as if that explained everything. As if that made it okay. "Jace," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm losing our baby." He looked at me, then really looked at me, and for a moment I saw conflict in his eyes. He saw the blood on my nightgown, saw the way I was hunched over in pain, saw the terror on my face. But then his phone buzzed with a text and his attention snapped back to it. "She says the pain is getting worse," he said, reading the message. "I have to go, Felicia. Call 911. I'll meet you at the hospital as soon as I can." "Don't leave me," I begged, reaching out for him. "Please, Jace. I'm scared." He hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds where my entire future hung in the balance. 3 seconds where he could have chosen differently, where he could have been the man I thought I married. Instead, he kissed my forehead quickly, like he was checking off a box on a to-do list. "You'll be fine," he said. "You're strong. Mom needs me right now." And then he was gone. I stood in that bathroom, bleeding and alone, listening to his car start in the driveway. I listened to him drive away from me, from us, from the family we'd created together. That's when I knew that everything I'd believed about my marriage was a lie. But I didn't know yet just how deep that lie went. I didn't know that at that very moment, Glenda was sitting in her living room, perfectly healthy, probably making herself a cup of tea and congratulating herself on a performance well done. I didn't know that this was all part of a plan. A plan to destroy me, to steal my husband, to make sure I never had the family I'd dreamed of. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that I was alone and I was losing my baby, and the man who'd promised to love and protect me had chosen someone else when I needed him most. I called 911 with shaking fingers, and as I waited for the ambulance, I made a promise to myself. If I survived this night, if my baby survived this night, I would never again be the kind of woman who trusted blindly. I would never again be the kind of woman who could be abandoned when she needed love most. I would become someone else entirely. Someone stronger. Someone smarter. Someone who could not be broken. I just didn't know yet what that transformation would cost me. Or what it would cost them. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and fluorescent lights and paramedics asking me questions I couldn't focus on answering. All I could think about was the baby. All I could think about was Jace's retreating figure, the sound of his car starting, the way he'd looked at his phone instead of at me. "Ma'am, we need you to stay with us," one of the paramedics said, shining a light in my eyes. "Can you tell me your name?" "Felicia," I whispered. "Felicia Hunter. I'm 26 weeks pregnant." "Hey Felicia. We're going to take good care of you. Is there someone we can call?" "Your husband." I almost laughed. The sound that came out instead was something between a sob and a gasp. "He's with his mother," I said. "She's having a heart attack." The paramedic's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry. That must be very difficult. If only he knew." St. Mary's Hospital was a maze of white corridors and antiseptic smells. They wheeled me into the emergency room, where a team of doctors and nurses immediately surrounded my gurney. Everyone was moving fast, talking in medical terms I didn't understand, hooking me up to machines that beeped and hummed. "Let's get her to ultrasound," someone said. "And I want a full blood panel." Dr. Valeria Carlos, the attending physician, had kind eyes and gentle hands. She explained everything as she examined me, her voice calm and professional even as I could see the concern in her expression. "We're going to do an ultrasound to check on the baby," she said, squeezing my hand. "Try to stay calm. Bleeding during pregnancy can have many causes and not all of them are serious." But I could tell from her tone that she was worried. I could tell from the way the nurses kept glancing at each other, from the speed with which they were working, that this was serious. The ultrasound room was dark except for the glow of the monitor. Dr. Carlos spread the cold gel on my belly and moved the wand slowly, searching. I held my breath, praying to see that familiar flutter of movement, that strong heartbeat that had been the soundtrack to my dreams for the past 6 months. The silence stretched on forever. "There," Dr. Carlos said finally, and I heard it, the rapid thump-thump-thump of my baby's heart. "The heartbeat is strong." I started crying then, relief flooding through me so powerfully that I felt dizzy. "The baby's okay?" "The baby appears to be fine," she said carefully. "But you're experiencing what we call a placental abruption. Part of the placenta has separated from the uterine wall, which is causing the bleeding." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. "It means we need to monitor you very closely. In some cases, the bleeding stops on its own and the pregnancy continues normally. In other cases..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We may need to deliver the baby early." "How early?" "You're 26 weeks. If we had to deliver now, the baby would have a good chance of survival, but there would be risks. Significant risks." I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. My baby might be born 3.5 months early. My baby might spend months in the NICU fighting for every breath. My baby might not survive at all. And Jace wasn't here. "Is there someone I can call for you?" Dr. Carlos asked gently. "Family? Friends?" I thought about it. My parents lived across the country and wouldn't be able to get here until tomorrow at the earliest. My sister was deployed overseas with the military. My closest friends were all back in my hometown 6 hours away. "My husband," I said finally. "He should be here soon." But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. How long did it take to check on someone having a heart attack? How long before Jace remembered that his wife and child needed him too? They moved me to a private room in the maternity ward, where I was hooked up to monitors that tracked both my vital signs and the baby's. The bleeding had slowed but hadn't stopped completely. Dr. Carlos ordered bed rest and said they'd reassess in the morning. I lay in that hospital bed, listening to the steady beep of the fetal heart monitor, and waited for my husband to come. And waited. At 6 a.m. a nurse came in to check my vitals. "Any word from your husband?" she asked kindly. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "I'm sure he'll be here soon," she said. Heart attacks can be very serious. He's probably still at the hospital with his mother. But I knew better. Even if Glenda was in surgery, even if she was in the ICU, Jace could have called. He could have sent a text. He could have done something to let me know he was thinking about me, about our baby. The silence was deafening. At 8 a.m. Dr. Carlos returned with good news. The bleeding had stopped completely, and the baby's heart rate remained strong and steady. I think we can cautiously say that the crisis has passed, she said with a smile. But I want to keep you here for observation for at least another day, maybe two. And the baby will be okay? The baby looks great. You'll need to take it easy for the rest of your pregnancy. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity, plenty of rest. But there's no reason to think you won't carry to term. I should have been overjoyed. I should have been calling everyone I knew to share the good news. Instead I felt hollow. Because the person I most wanted to share this with, the person who should have been here holding my hand through the worst night of my life, was nowhere to be found. At 10 a.m. I finally broke down and called him. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. His voice, cheerful and familiar, felt like a knife in my chest. Hi, you've reached Jace. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. I hung up without saying anything. What was there to say? That I'd spent the night thinking I was losing our baby while he was playing the devoted son? That I'd never felt more alone in my life? That I was starting to question everything I thought I knew about the man I'd married? I tried texting instead. Baby and I are okay. Still at hospital. Where are you? No response. By noon I was furious. Whatever was happening with Glenda, surely it couldn't take this long. Surely he could spare 5 minutes to check on his wife and unborn child. I called Glenda's house directly. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. Hello. For a moment I was so shocked I couldn't speak. She sounded perfectly fine. Not like someone who'd just had a heart attack. Not like someone who'd spent the night in the emergency room. Glenda. I said finally. It's Felicia. Oh, hello dear. Her voice was warm, friendly, completely normal. How are you feeling? How was I feeling? How was I feeling? I'm in the hospital, I said slowly. I had complications with the pregnancy last night. Jace said you were having a heart attack. There was a pause. A long pause that made my skin crawl. Oh yes, she said finally, and now her voice sounded different. It was just a false alarm, thank goodness. You know how these things can be. I thought I was having chest pains, but it turned out to be nothing more than indigestion. Indigestion. My husband had abandoned me during a pregnancy emergency for indigestion. Where is Jace? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. He's sleeping, dear. The poor boy was so worried about me he stayed up all night. I finally convinced him to get some rest. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Something that felt like the beginning of understanding. He stayed the night? Of course. He couldn't possibly leave his mother alone after such a scare. You understand, don't you, dear? No, I didn't understand. I didn't understand how a grown man could choose to spend the night comforting his mother over imaginary chest pains while his wife was alone in a hospital bed, bleeding and terrified. Could you wake him up, please? I said. I need to talk to him. Oh, I hate to disturb him. He's been so stressed lately and he needs his rest. Why don't you call back this evening? This evening. She wanted me to wait until this evening to speak to my own husband. Glenda, I said, and my voice was shaking now with rage. I almost lost our baby last night. I need to talk to Jace. Now. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of warmth. I'm sure you're being dramatic, dear. These little pregnancy scares happen all the time. Jace told me you have a tendency to overreact. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. Had that really just happened? Had my mother-in-law really just dismissed my medical emergency as dramatics? Had she really just hung up on me? And what did she mean Jace had told her I had a tendency to overreact? When had they discussed that? When had my husband been talking to his mother about my supposed character flaws? I tried calling Jace again. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Your mother says you're sleeping. I almost lost our baby last night. Call me now. No response. The afternoon stretched on endlessly. Nurses came and went, checking my vitals, asking about my pain levels, bringing me meals I couldn't eat. Dr. Carlos stopped by to tell me the latest ultrasound looked good and that I could probably go home tomorrow if I continued to improve. Is your husband coming to pick you up? She asked. I'm not sure, I said, because what else could I say? That my husband had apparently decided his mother's indigestion was more important than his wife's pregnancy crisis? That I was starting to suspect my marriage was built on lies? At 4 p.m. my phone finally rang. Jace's name appeared on the screen and I felt a mixture of relief and rage so intense it made me dizzy. Where the hell have you been? I said instead of hello. Felicia, I'm sorry. Mom's been really shaken up by last night and Your mother is fine, I interrupted. I called her. She said it was indigestion. Silence. Jace? Did you hear me? She said it was indigestion. Well, yes, but at the time we didn't know that. She was having chest pains and with her family history of heart disease. I was bleeding. I screamed, not caring who heard me. I was bleeding and in pain and terrified, and you left me. You left me alone. You said you'd call an ambulance. That's not the point. Tears were streaming down my face now. The point is that when I needed you most, when our baby needed you most, you chose her. You chose your mother's imaginary heart attack over your wife's real emergency. It wasn't imaginary, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She was really scared, Felicia. She needed me. I needed you too. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with all the hurt and betrayal I was feeling. How's the baby? He asked finally, and I could hear the guilt in his voice. Alive, I said flatly. No thanks to you. Felicia, that's not fair. Fair. I laughed, and it was a bitter, broken sound. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been my husband staying with me during a medical emergency. Fair would have been my husband calling to check on me. Fair would have been my husband choosing his wife and child over his mother's gas pains. You're being dramatic. There was the same word Glenda had used. The same dismissive tone. Am I? I said quietly. Am I being dramatic, Jace? Because from where I'm sitting it seems like I'm being pretty reasonable. I almost lost our baby last night and you weren't here. You weren't here and you didn't call and you didn't text, and when I finally reached you, the first thing you did was defend your mother. She's my mother, Felicia. She raised me alone after Dad died. I can't just abandon her when she needs me. But you can abandon me. It wasn't a question. That's different. How? How is it different? Because. He struggled for words. Because you're strong. You can handle things. Mom is fragile. Fragile. He thought his mother was fragile and I was strong, so it was okay to leave me bleeding and alone in a hospital bed because I could handle it. I'm hanging up now, I said. Felicia, wait. I'm hanging up and I don't want to see you when I get home tomorrow. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear your excuses or your apologies or your explanations. I want you to stay at your mother's house and think about what you've done. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I hung up and turned off my phone. Then I lay back in that hospital bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to my baby's heartbeat on the monitor, and tried to figure out how my life had fallen apart so completely in the span of 24 hours. But even then, even in my anger and hurt, I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. I had no idea that Jace and Glenda's betrayal ran so much deeper than one night of misplaced priorities. I had no idea that they'd been planning this for months. And I had no idea that by the time I figured out the truth, it would almost be too late to save myself. I took a taxi home from the hospital the next day. Taxi. Like I was a stranger in my own life, like I didn't have a husband who should have been there to drive me home, to help me up the stairs, to make sure I was comfortable and safe. The house felt different when I walked in. Colder somehow, despite the October sun streaming through the windows. Everything looked the same. The photos on the mantel, the throw pillows I'd carefully arranged on the couch, the half-finished nursery down the hall, but it all felt like a stage set now. Like props in a play I didn't remember auditioning for. Jace's car wasn't in the driveway. Good. I wasn't ready to see him yet, wasn't ready to hear whatever excuses he'd prepared during his night at Mommy's house. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the backyard where we'd planned to put a swing set someday. The silence was deafening. For 2 years, this house had been filled with laughter and conversation and the comfortable sounds of a couple building a life together. Now it felt like a mausoleum. My phone buzzed with a text from Jace. Saw your car in the driveway. Glad you're home safe. Can we talk? I deleted it without responding. Another text. I know you're angry, but we need to discuss this like adults. Deleted. Another. I'm coming over. I turned my phone off and went upstairs to take a shower. The hot water felt good on my skin, washing away the antiseptic smell of the hospital, the memory of those terrible hours alone. But it couldn't wash away the hurt. It couldn't wash away the growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with my marriage. I was getting dressed when I heard his key in the front door. Felicia. His voice echoed through the house. We need to talk. I took my time coming downstairs, partly because Dr. Carlos had told me to take it easy, but mostly because I wanted him to wait. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the anxiety I'd felt waiting for him to call, to text, to remember that I existed. He was standing in the living room, still wearing the same clothes from 2 nights ago. His hair was messy, his face unshaven, and he looked like he hadn't slept. Good. How are you feeling? He asked, and I could hear the guilt in his voice. Like my husband abandoned me during a medical emergency, I said flatly. He winced. Felicia, I'm sorry. I know how it must have looked. How it looked. I interrupted. Jace, this isn't about appearances. This is about choices. You made a choice that night and it wasn't me. That's not true. I was torn. For 3 seconds, I said. You were torn for exactly 3 seconds and then you chose your mother. Your mother who was having chest pains that turned out to be indigestion. We didn't know that at the time. Didn't we? I studied his face carefully. Tell me something, Jace. When your mother called that night, what exactly did she say? He shifted uncomfortably. She said she was having chest pains. That she thought she might be having a heart attack. And then what? And then I went to help her. No, I said slowly. What happened when you got there? What did you find? Another uncomfortable shift. She was sitting on the couch. She said the pain had gotten better, but she was still scared. Sitting on the couch, I repeated. Not on the floor. Not clutching her chest. Not calling 911. Sitting on the couch. Felicia. Did you take her to the hospital? She didn't want to go. She said she was feeling better. So you spent the night comforting a woman who was feeling better while your wife was alone in an actual hospital. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now it just looked like what it was. A man trying to avoid taking responsibility for his actions. You don't understand, he said. Mom has been through a lot. She's fragile. There was that word again. Fragile. Tell me about fragile, I said, settling into the armchair across from him. Tell me about how fragile your mother is. You know her history. Dad's death, raising me alone, her health problems. What health problems? He blinked. What? You said health problems. What health problems does your mother have? Well, she has anxiety. And her blood pressure. Her blood pressure's fine, I said. I've been to every family dinner for 2 years, Jace. I've never seen her take a single medication. I've never heard her mention a doctor's appointment. I've never seen any evidence of these mysterious health problems. That doesn't mean. And her anxiety, I continued. The woman who runs the church fundraising committee, who organized your cousin's wedding, who never met a social situation she couldn't dominate. That woman has anxiety. Jace was quiet now, staring at his hands. I think, I said carefully, that you've been lying to me. I think you've been lying to me about your mother, about your relationship with her, about a lot of things. That's not true. Isn't it? I leaned forward. When was the last time you chose me over her, Jace? When was the last time you told her no about anything? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. I'll wait, I said. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. She needs me, he said finally. I needed you too. Our baby needed you too. That's different. How? Because. He struggled for words. Because you're my wife. You're supposed to understand. You're supposed to support me. Support you in what? In abandoning me during a medical emergency? In prioritizing your mother's feelings over your family's safety. She's family too. Is she? I stood up slowly, my hand instinctively going to my belly. Because from where I'm standing it seems like you have to choose. And you keep choosing her. I shouldn't have to choose. But you do, I said quietly. Every marriage requires choices, Jace. Every day you choose whether to put your spouse first or someone else first. And every day since we got married, you've chosen someone else. That's not. When we were planning our wedding, who did you consult about the guest list? Mom helped. When we bought this house, who had to approve it? She just wanted to make sure. When I got pregnant, who was the first person you called? He was quiet. It wasn't me, I said. You called your mother before you even told me congratulations. She was excited. And when I was bleeding and scared and thought I was losing our baby, who did you choose? Felicia, please. Who did you choose, Jace? I chose. His voice was barely a whisper. I chose Mom. The admission hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Yes, I said. You did. I walked to the window and stared out at the street where we'd planned to teach our child to ride a bike someday. Where we'd planned to have block parties and barbecues and all the normal happy things that normal happy families do. I want you to leave, I said without turning around. What? I want you to pack a bag and go back to your mother's house. I need time to think. Felicia, we can work this out. Can we? I turned to face him. Can we really? Because I don't think you understand what happened that night. I don't think you understand what you did to me, to us. I made a mistake. No, I said firmly. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. What you did was make a choice. A choice that showed me exactly where I stand in your life. You're my wife. Am I? Because wives come first, Jace. Wives and children come before mothers and fathers and siblings and friends. That's what marriage means. That's what those vows we took meant. I love you. Do you? The question surprised even me. Do you really? Or do you love the idea of me? Do you love having a wife who doesn't complain when you spend every Sunday at your mother's house? Do you love having a wife who smiles and nods when your mother criticizes everything from my cooking to my career to my family? She doesn't criticize. She does, I said quietly. She has from the beginning. And you've never once defended me. Not once. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. I need you to leave, I said again. I need space to figure out if this marriage is worth saving. Of course it's worth saving. We're having a baby. Are we? The words came out harsher than I intended. Because it seems to me like I'm having a baby. You're just there. Sometimes. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Pack a bag, Jace. Go to your mother's house. Stay there until I decide what I want to do. How long? I don't know. Felicia, please. We can go to counseling. We can work this out. I looked at him standing there in our living room, this man I'd thought I knew, this man I'd planned to spend my life with. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Like a little boy who'd been caught doing something wrong and couldn't understand why everyone was so upset. Maybe, I said. But not today. Today I just want you gone. He nodded slowly, defeat written across his features. I'll pack some things. I listened to him moving around upstairs, opening drawers, closing suitcase zippers. The sounds of a marriage falling apart. When he came back down with his bag, he paused at the front door. I do love you, he said. I know I screwed up, but I do love you. I know you think you do, I replied. But love is more than words, Jace. Love is choices. Love is actions. Love is being there when it matters most. I'll do better. Will you? He didn't answer because we both knew the truth. He wouldn't do better. He couldn't do better. Because doing better would mean choosing me over his mother, and that was something he'd never been able to do. After he left, I sat in the silence of our house and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 3 days, my entire life had been turned upside down. I'd almost lost my baby, discovered my husband's true priorities, and kicked him out of our home. But even then, even in the midst of my anger and hurt, I thought this was the worst of it. I thought the betrayal was simple. A mama's boy who couldn't cut the apron strings, a marriage that needed work but could potentially be saved. I had no idea that what I'd discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. I had no idea that Jace and Glenda had been planning something much worse than emotional manipulation. I had no idea that the phone call that night hadn't been a coincidence. And I had no idea that while I was sitting in my living room trying to figure out how to save my marriage, they were already working on their next move. The first sign that something was deeply wrong came 3 days later, when I tried to access our joint bank account. I'd been putting off dealing with practical matters, focusing instead on bed rest and trying to process the emotional wreckage of my marriage. But bills needed to be paid, and I needed to transfer money from savings to cover the hospital expenses that insurance wouldn't handle. The account was frozen. I stared at the computer screen, certain I'd made a mistake. I tried logging in again, double-checking my password, clearing my browser cache. Nothing worked. The account showed as temporarily restricted pending verification. I called the bank. Mrs. Hunter, the customer service representative said after I'd provided all my identification information, it appears your husband initiated a fraud investigation on this account yesterday. All transactions have been suspended until the investigation is complete. A fraud investigation? My voice sounded strange, distant. What kind of fraud? I'm not able to provide specific details over the phone, but I can tell you that Mr. Hunter reported suspicious activity and requested that the account be frozen to prevent further unauthorized transactions. Unauthorized by whom? I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation. You'll need to come into the branch with proper identification to resolve this matter. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Jace had frozen our joint account. Our joint account that I'd been using for 2 years to pay our mortgage, our utilities, our groceries. Our joint account that had my name on it, that I had every legal right to access. Why would he do that? What possible reason could he have for cutting off my access to our money? Unless... A cold dread settled in my stomach as I opened my laptop and started checking our other accounts. The savings account we'd been building for the baby's college fund. Frozen. The credit card we used for household expenses. Cancelled. Even the small checking account I'd kept from before our marriage, the one with my name only on it, showed a balance of zero. I called that bank next. Mrs. Hunter, yes, I see the issue. It appears there was an automatic transfer set up on your account. All funds were moved to account ending in 4847 on October 16th. October 16th. The day after I'd been in the hospital. The day Jace had been at his mother's house, supposedly comforting her after her fake heart attack. I didn't authorize any automatic transfer, I said, my voice getting stronger with anger. I want to know where my money went. I'm showing that the transfer was authorized using your online banking credentials. The receiving account is listed as a joint account under Jace Hunter and Glenda Hunter. Glenda Hunter. My mother-in-law's name was Glenda Morrison. She'd never taken her husband's name, had been proud of keeping her maiden name even after marriage. So why was she listed as Glenda Hunter on a bank account with my husband? Ma'am, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. Would you like me to initiate a fraud investigation? Yes. Yes, I want to report this as fraud. But even as I said the words, I knew it was too late. The money was gone, moved to an account I had no access to, controlled by 2 people who had apparently been planning this for longer than I wanted to think about. I spent the rest of the day on the phone with banks, credit card companies, and insurance providers, trying to piece together the scope of what had been done to me. The picture that emerged was devastating. Every account with Jace's name on it had been emptied or frozen. Every credit card had been canceled. Even our car insurance had been canceled, leaving me without coverage. The mortgage payment that was supposed to come out automatically next week would bounce, because there was no money left in the account to cover it. In the span of 24 hours while I'd been recovering from a pregnancy emergency, my husband had systematically cut off my access to every financial resource we'd built together. But the worst discovery came when I called our health insurance company. Mrs. Hunter, I'm showing that your coverage was terminated yesterday. Your husband called to remove you from the policy, citing a change in marital status. A change in marital status? We're still married. According to our records, Mr. Hunter reported that you were separated and no longer eligible for coverage under his employer's plan. Separated. He'd told the insurance company we were separated, which meant if something happened to me or the baby, I'd have no coverage. I'd be responsible for thousands of dollars in medical bills that I now had no way to pay. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my kitchen, trying to process what I'd learned. This wasn't the impulsive action of a guilty husband trying to protect himself. This was calculated. This was planned. This was deliberate financial abuse designed to leave me completely helpless. And it had been executed while I was in the hospital, bleeding and alone, thinking my biggest problem was a husband who couldn't prioritize properly. My phone rang. Jace's name appeared on the screen. "What have you done?" I said instead of hello. "Felicia, we need to talk." "What have you done to our accounts?" "I can explain." "You stole my money." I was screaming now, not caring who heard me. "You stole my money and canceled my insurance and left me with nothing." "I didn't steal anything. I protected our assets." "Protected them from what?" "From me. I'm your wife." "Are you?" His voice was cold now, nothing like the guilty, apologetic tone he'd used 3 days ago. "Because the way I see it, you kicked me out of my own house. You told me our marriage might not be worth saving. So I took steps to protect myself." "By stealing from me?" "By securing our joint assets until we can work out a fair division." "Fair division?" "Jace, I have no money. I can't pay the mortgage, I can't buy groceries, I can't even pay for gas to get to my doctor's appointments. That's not my problem anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't the man I'd married. This wasn't the man who'd held my hand during our first ultrasound, who'd cried when we'd heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time. This was a stranger. A cruel stranger who was systematically destroying my life. "Who are you?" I whispered. "I'm someone who's tired of being taken for granted," he said. "I'm someone who's tired of being married to a woman who doesn't respect my family." "Your family? What about our family? What about our baby? What about it?" The casual cruelty in his voice made my blood run cold. "Jace, I'm pregnant with your child. How can you do this to us? Are you sure it's my child?" The question hung in the air like poison. I felt the world tilt around me, felt everything I thought I knew about reality shift and crumble. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. Are you sure the baby is mine?" "How can you even ask that?" "Because I've been thinking about it, Felicia. About how distant you've been lately. About how you've been working late so often. About that business trip to Chicago last month." "I was at a conference." "You know that." "Do I?" "Because I've been wondering if maybe there's a reason you're so eager to push me away. Maybe there's a reason you don't want me around." I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. He was questioning the paternity of our child. Our child that we'd planned together, that we'd been trying to conceive for months, that I'd never been anything but faithful and devoted to. "You're sick," I said. "You're actually sick." "Am I? Or am I just finally seeing clearly?" "Seeing what?" "What are you seeing, Jace?" "I'm seeing a woman who's been lying to me. A woman who's been manipulating me. A woman who's been using me." "Using you for what?" "For money. For security. For a father for your bastard child." I hung up the phone and ran to the bathroom where I threw up everything I'd eaten that day. I knelt on the cold tile floor, retching and sobbing, while my husband's words echoed in my head. Bastard child. He called our baby a bastard child. When I finally stopped vomiting, I sat back against the bathroom wall and tried to think. This wasn't random. This wasn't the result of a guilty conscience or a mama's boy who couldn't set boundaries. This was something else entirely. This was a plan. A plan to isolate me financially. A plan to question the paternity of our child. A plan to paint me as an unfaithful wife and manipulative gold digger. But why? Why would Jace want to destroy me like this? Why would he want to destroy our marriage, our family, our future together? The answer came to me slowly, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Glenda, who'd never liked me. Glenda, who'd made subtle digs about my background, my family, my career from the moment we'd met. Glenda, who'd always found reasons why Jace needed to spend time with her instead of with me. Glenda, who'd had a convenient heart attack the night I'd almost lost our baby. Glenda, whose name was now on a bank account with my husband. Glenda, who'd raised Jace alone and had never wanted to share him with anyone. This wasn't about Jace choosing his mother over his wife. This was about Glenda choosing to eliminate the competition entirely. And somehow she'd convinced her son to help her do it. I pulled myself up from the bathroom floor and walked to the bedroom, where I opened the closet and stared at the safe where we kept our important documents. Birth certificates, social security cards, insurance policies, our marriage certificate. I needed to see our marriage certificate. I needed to see if there was something I'd missed, some detail that would explain how this was happening. The safe was empty. Every document that proved who I was, every piece of paper that established my legal rights as Jace's wife, every record of our shared life together, gone. I sank onto the bed, finally understanding the scope of what was happening to me. This wasn't just financial abuse. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was identity theft. This was an attempt to erase me completely, to make it as if Felicia Hunter had never existed. And I was starting to suspect that the end game wasn't just divorce. I was starting to suspect that Glenda and Jace wanted me gone permanently. The question was, how far were they willing to go to make that happen? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every sound in the house made me jump. The settling of old wood, the hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of wind through the trees outside. I kept thinking about those empty accounts, those missing documents, that cold stranger's voice on the phone questioning the paternity of our child. By morning I'd made a decision. I was going to fight back. But first I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting against. I started with the internet, searching for any trace of Glenda Morrison, or Glenda Hunter as she was apparently calling herself now. What I found made my blood run cold. There were records. Public records that painted a picture I'd never seen before. Glenda Morrison had been married 3 times, not once as she'd always claimed. Her first husband, Jace's father, had died in a car accident when Jace was 12. That much was true. But her second husband, a man named Elliot Max, had died just 2 years later under suspicious circumstances. The death had been ruled accidental, a fall down the stairs, but there had been an investigation. An investigation that had ultimately been closed due to lack of evidence. Her third husband, Antonio Edward, had lasted 5 years before dying of what was listed as a heart attack. He'd been 43 years old with no history of heart problems. 3 dead husbands. 3 life insurance payouts. 3 convenient deaths that had left Glenda financially comfortable and free to focus all her attention on her son. I printed everything I could find, my hands shaking as the pages emerged from the printer. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be the woman who'd sat at my kitchen table, who'd helped plan my baby shower, who'd smiled and hugged me at family gatherings. But it was. The documents didn't lie. I kept searching, digging deeper into public records, court filings, newspaper archives. What I found next made me physically sick. There had been other women. Other women who'd gotten involved with Jace, who'd gotten serious enough to meet his mother, who'd then mysteriously disappeared from his life. Valeria Braden, who'd dated Jace for 2 years before our relationship. According to social media posts I found archived online, she'd been planning to move in with him. Then suddenly all her posts stopped. Her social media accounts went dark. When I searched for her name in recent records, I found a death certificate. Suicide, the record said. She'd overdosed on sleeping pills just 3 months before Jace and I had met. Before that, there had been Amanda Foster. Another serious girlfriend. Another woman who'd been talking about marriage and children. Another woman who'd died young. A car accident this time, late at night on a winding mountain road. And before Amanda there had been Lisa Park. A house fire. Electrical malfunction, the investigation had concluded. For women. For women who'd loved Jace Hunter, who'd planned futures with him, who died before those futures could come to pass. For women who'd all met Glenda Morrison before they died. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence spread across my desk and felt the world shift around me. This wasn't about a possessive mother who couldn't let go of her son. This wasn't about financial abuse or emotional manipulation. This was about murder. Glenda Morrison was a serial killer, and her son was either her accomplice or her next victim. Either way, I was in danger. Serious, immediate danger. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. Hello. Mrs. Hunter? This is Detective Maria Santos with the County Sheriff's Department. I'd like to speak with you about your husband and mother-in-law. My heart stopped. What about them? Ma'am, I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available to meet this afternoon? Yes, I said immediately. Yes, I'm available. Good. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on Main Street at 2 p.m.? And Mrs. Hunter? Don't tell anyone about this call. Not your husband, not his mother, not anyone. Do you understand? I understand. The line went dead and I sat staring at my phone, my mind racing. The police were investigating Jace and Glenda. Which meant I wasn't crazy. Which meant my suspicions were justified. Which meant I was in even more danger than I'd thought. I spent the next few hours gathering everything I'd found, printing documents, organizing evidence. If Detective Santos was investigating them, she'd want to see what I'd discovered. She'd want to know about the financial abuse, the missing documents, the pattern of dead girlfriends. At 1:45, I drove to the Starbucks, checking my rearview mirror constantly to make sure I wasn't being followed. I felt paranoid, jumpy, like I was living in a thriller movie instead of my real life. Detective Santos was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and an air of competence that immediately made me feel safer. "Mrs. Hunter," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for calling," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I have to ask, how did you know to contact me?" "We've been investigating your mother-in-law for several months," she said quietly. "Your name came up in our research as someone who might be at risk." "At risk of what?" "At risk of becoming another victim." The words hung in the air between us, confirming my worst fears. "You know about the other women," I said. It wasn't a question. "We know about Valeria Braden, Amanda Foster, and Lisa Park. We suspect there may be others we haven't identified yet." "And you think Glenda killed them?" "We think Glenda Morrison is a very dangerous woman who has a pattern of eliminating threats to her relationship with her son. The question is whether your husband is a willing participant or another victim of her manipulation." I thought about Jace's cold voice on the phone, his casual cruelty, his willingness to steal my money and question our baby's paternity. "He's participating," I said. "Willingly." Detective Santos nodded grimly. "That's what we suspected. Which makes your situation even more dangerous." I pulled out the folder of documents I'd gathered. "I found some things you might want to see." For the next hour, I walked her through everything I'd discovered. The financial abuse, the missing documents, the pattern of deaths surrounding Glenda's previous relationships. Detective Santos took notes, asked questions, and occasionally made phone calls to colleagues. "This is very helpful," she said finally. "But I need you to understand something, Mrs. Hunter. We don't have enough evidence yet to arrest either of them. What we have is circumstantial, suspicious, but not conclusive. So what do I do? Just wait for them to kill me?" "No. You're going to help us get the evidence we need." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "We want you to go back home. Act normal. Let them think their plan is working." "Are you insane? You just told me they're murderers. And we're going to protect you. We'll have surveillance on your house 24/7. We'll have undercover officers nearby at all times. But we need them to make a move, to do something that gives us concrete evidence of their intentions. You want to use me as bait. We want to catch them before they hurt anyone else. And right now you're our best chance to do that." I stared at her, trying to process what she was asking. Go home to a house where my husband and his mother were planning to kill me. Pretend everything was normal. Wait for them to try to murder me so the police could catch them in the act. What if something goes wrong? What if they succeed? "They won't," Detective Santos said firmly. "We won't let them. But Mrs. Hunter, if you don't help us, they're going to keep doing this. There will be other women, other victims. You have a chance to stop them." I thought about Valeria Braden, about Amanda Foster, about Lisa Park. I thought about all the women who might come after me if Jace and Glenda weren't stopped. I thought about my baby growing inside me, depending on me to keep us both safe. "What do you need me to do?" "Go home. Act like you're trying to reconcile with your husband. Let him think you're desperate, that you'll do anything to save your marriage. We need them to feel confident, to let their guard down. And then we wait for them to show their hand." Detective Santos gave me a small device that looked like a button from a coat. "This is a panic button," she explained. "If you're in immediate danger, press it and hold for 3 seconds. We'll be there in under 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a long time when someone's trying to kill you. It's the best we can do. Mrs. Hunter, I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. But it's also the only way to stop them." I took the device, feeling its weight in my palm. Such a small thing to hold my life in the balance. "There's something else," Detective Santos said. "We think they're planning to move soon. Your husband has been making inquiries about selling the house, and your mother-in-law has been researching properties in other states. If they disappear, we may never catch them. How long do we have?" "Days, maybe a week at most." I drove home in a daze, the panic button hidden in my pocket, Detective Santos's words echoing in my head. "Days, maybe a week." That's how long I had to pretend to be the naive, trusting wife while my husband and his mother planned my murder. The house felt different when I walked in, not just cold now but actively malevolent. Like the walls themselves were watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake that would cost me my life. I was making dinner when Jace's key turned in the lock. "Felicia?" he called out, his voice cautious. "In the kitchen," I replied, forcing my voice to sound normal. He appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me." "I've been thinking," I said, not turning around from the stove. "About what you said. About our marriage. And..." I took a deep breath, preparing to give the performance of my life. "And I think you're right. I think I have been taking you for granted. I think I haven't been respectful enough of your relationship with your mother." I could feel him relaxing behind me, could hear the relief in his voice when he spoke. "I'm glad you see that. I was hoping you'd come around. I want to make this work, Jace. I want to save our marriage." "So do I." I turned to face him, forcing a smile. "Maybe we could have dinner with your mother tomorrow? I'd like to apologize to her for the way I've been acting." His smile was genuine now, warm and loving, the smile of the man I'd thought I'd married. "She'd like that," he said. "She's been worried about you." "I'll bet she has," I thought. Worried that I might figure out her plan before she could execute it. "Good," I said aloud. "I'll call her in the morning." That night, Jace slept in our bed for the first time in a week. I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing, feeling the panic button in my hand, and wondering if I would live to see another sunrise. Outside, I knew Detective Santos and her team were watching. But in the darkness of my bedroom, with a potential killer sleeping inches away from me, their protection felt very far away indeed. Tomorrow I would have dinner with the woman who had murdered at least 4 people. Tomorrow I would sit at her table and smile and apologize while she planned my death. Tomorrow the real game would begin. And I had no idea if I was strong enough to survive it. I called Glenda at exactly 9 a.m. after Jace had left for work. My hands were shaking as I dialed, but my voice was steady when she answered. "Glenda? It's Felicia." "Oh." Her voice was cool, distant. "Hello, dear. I was wondering if I could come over for dinner tonight. I'd like to talk to you about some things." There was a pause. I could practically hear her calculating, trying to figure out what angle I was playing. "What sort of things?" "I owe you an apology," I said, injecting just the right amount of shame into my voice. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realize I've been unfair to you. Unfair to both of you." Another pause. Longer this time. "I see. I know I've been difficult lately. The pregnancy hormones, the stress. It's no excuse, but I haven't been myself. And when you had your health scare the other night, I should have been more understanding about Jace needing to be with you." "Yes," she said slowly. "You should have been. I'd like to make it right. If you'll let me." I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could imagine her weighing her options. This was either going to work or it was going to make her suspicious enough to accelerate whatever timeline she and Jace had planned. "Very well," she said finally. "Come at 6. I'll make pot roast." "Thank you, Glenda. This means a lot to me." "I'm sure it does, dear." The line went dead and I sat staring at my phone. There had been something in her voice, something cold and knowing that made my skin crawl. But I'd done it. I'd gotten myself invited to dinner with a serial killer. I spent the day preparing, both mentally and practically. I charged my phone fully, made sure the panic button was working, and went over the plan Detective Santos had outlined. Act contrite. Act desperate to save my marriage. Give them confidence that I was no longer a threat. Most importantly, try to get them to reveal their plans. At 5:30, I drove to Glenda's house, a modest ranch-style home in an older neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business and strange sounds in the night could easily be explained away. Jace's car was already in the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the house where I might die tonight. It looked so normal, so innocent. White siding, blue shutters, a small garden with late-blooming mums. The kind of house where a grandmother might live, where family dinners and holiday celebrations happened. Not the kind of house where a woman planned murders. I touched the panic button in my pocket one more time, then got out of the car and walked to the front door. Jace answered before I could knock. "Hey," he said, and his smile seemed genuine. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too." He led me into the living room where Glenda was waiting. She looked exactly as she always had, a well-preserved woman in her early 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a floral blouse and sensible slacks. She could have been anyone's mother, anyone's grandmother. He could have been a killer. "Felicia," she said, standing to embrace me. "You look tired, dear. Are you getting enough rest?" The concern in her voice sounded genuine, but I could feel the calculation behind it. She was assessing me, looking for weaknesses, for opportunities. "I haven't been sleeping well," I admitted. "Everything that's happened, it's been stressful." "Of course it has. Pregnancy is difficult enough without marital problems adding to the burden." She gestured for me to sit on the couch, and I noticed that she'd positioned herself between me and the front door. Jace sat on my other side, effectively boxing me in. "Can I get you something to drink?" Glenda asked. "Water? Tea?" "Water would be great, thank you." She disappeared into the kitchen and I was alone with Jace. He reached over and took my hand, his touch gentle and familiar. "I'm really glad you called Mom," he said. "I know she's been hurt by some of the things that have happened between us." "I know. I feel terrible about it." "She loves you, Felicia. He loves us. She just wants what's best for our family." "Our family." The irony wasn't lost on me. Glenda returned with a glass of water, and I noticed her watching carefully as I took a sip. Was there something in it? Some drug that would make me compliant, make it easier for them to stage my death? The water tasted normal, but I made a mental note to drink as little as possible. "Dinner will be ready in a few minutes," Glenda said, settling back into her chair. "But first I think we should talk." "I'd like that. Jace tells me you've been having some financial difficulties." I blinked, surprised by the directness of the statement. "Well, yes. Since the accounts were frozen." "Oh, that," she waved dismissively. "That's just a temporary precaution. Jace was protecting your assets during this difficult time." "Protecting them from what?" "From yourself, dear." Her voice was patient, condescending. "You haven't been thinking clearly lately. The pregnancy, the hormones, the stress. It's affected your judgment." I felt anger flare in my chest but forced myself to stay calm. "I suppose you're right. Of course I am. That's why Jace and I have been discussing what's best for you and the baby." "What do you mean?" Jace squeezed my hand. "We think you need help, Felicia. Professional help." "What kind of help?" "There's a facility," Glenda said smoothly. "A very nice place that specializes in helping women who are struggling with pregnancy-related mental health issues. They have excellent doctors, beautiful grounds, and they're very discreet." "A facility. They wanted to put me in some kind of institution." "I don't understand. I'm not having mental health issues." "Aren't you?" Glenda's voice was gentle, but her eyes were cold. "You've been paranoid, accusatory, irrational. You've made wild claims about Jace stealing from you, about me faking a medical emergency. You've threatened to leave your husband over imaginary slights. Those aren't imaginary. See?" She looked at Jace meaningfully. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't see how your behavior has changed, how concerning it's become." I looked at Jace, hoping to see some flicker of the man I'd married, some sign that he knew this was wrong. Instead, I saw only concern. Fake concern, but convincing enough that anyone watching would believe he was a loving husband worried about his unstable wife. "The facility has an excellent maternity ward," he said. "You'd get the best possible care for the baby while getting the help you need. And after the baby is born? We'll see how you're doing," Glenda said. "Recovery from these kinds of issues can take time. Months, sometimes years." Years. They wanted to lock me away for years, to steal my baby and raise it themselves while I rotted in some psychiatric facility. It was brilliant, actually. Much cleaner than murder. No body to dispose of, no investigation to worry about. Just a tragic case of postpartum psychosis that required long-term treatment. "I don't want to go to a facility," I said carefully. "I want to work things out here at home with my family." "That's not possible," Jace said firmly. "Not until you get better." "But I'm not sick." "Denial is part of the illness," Glenda said sadly. "That's what makes it so dangerous." The timer in the kitchen went off and Glenda stood. "Dinner's ready. We can continue this conversation over pot roast." She disappeared into the kitchen and I heard her moving around, opening the oven, clattering dishes. Jace was still holding my hand, still looking at me with that expression of fake concern. "This is for your own good," he said quietly. "I know you can't see that now, but someday you'll understand." "When?" I asked. When would this happen? Soon. Tomorrow actually. I've already made the arrangements. Tomorrow. They were planning to have me committed tomorrow. I excused myself to use the bathroom, my heart pounding as I walked down the hallway. Once inside, I locked the door and pulled out my phone, typing a quick text to Detective Santos. They want to commit me to psychiatric facility tomorrow. Need help now. The response came back immediately. Stay calm. We're listening. Get them to say more. Listening. Of course. They'd probably bugged the house or had some kind of surveillance equipment that could pick up conversations. I flushed the toilet and washed my hands, then returned to the dining room where Glenda was setting out plates of pot roast, mashed potatoes and green beans. It looked delicious, like something a loving grandmother would make for her family. This looks wonderful, I said, taking my seat. Thank you for going to all this trouble. It's no trouble at all, dear. Family takes care of family. We ate in relative silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the clinking of silverware and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. I picked at my food, still worried about being drugged, but I needed to keep up appearances. So tell me about this facility, I said finally. What's it called? Serenity Hills, Glenda said. It's about 3 hours north of here in the mountains. Very peaceful, very private. Private. They don't allow visitors for the first few months, Jace explained. It's part of the treatment protocol. Patients need to focus on getting better without outside distractions. No visitors. No contact with the outside world. No way for anyone to check on me or verify that I was actually sick. What about the baby? I asked. What happens when the baby is born? The facility has an excellent nursery, Glenda said. But given your condition, it might be best if the baby came to stay with us until you're well enough to care for it properly. How long would that be? As long as it takes, Jace said. These things can't be rushed. I set down my fork, my appetite completely gone. And if I refused to go? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Glenda and Jace exchanged a look that lasted just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. That's not really an option, Glenda said gently. Jace has already spoken to a judge about having you committed involuntarily. For your own safety and the safety of the baby. A judge agreed to that? Judge Kevin is an old family friend, she said with a smile. He's known Jace since he was a boy. When Jace explained the situation, the paranoid delusions, the erratic behavior, the threats of self-harm. I never threatened self-harm. Didn't you? Jace pulled out his phone and played a recording. My own voice filled the room. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. I just want it all to end. It was from the night I'd kicked him out, when I'd been crying and emotional and devastated by his betrayal. But taken out of context, edited and manipulated, it sounded like a suicide threat. You recorded me, I whispered. I was worried about you, he said. I wanted to document your decline so the doctors would understand how serious this is. There are other recordings, Glenda added. Quite a few actually. All showing a clear pattern of mental instability. I felt the walls closing in around me. They'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Recording my conversations, building a case against me, setting up a scenario where I could be locked away indefinitely while they raised my child and lived off the money they'd stolen from me. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. Of course, dear. The back patio is lovely this time of evening. I walked through the kitchen to the sliding glass door that led to the patio, my mind racing. I needed to get them to say more, to admit what they were really doing. But I also needed to be careful not to push too hard, not to make them suspicious. The patio was small and enclosed by a high wooden fence. No neighbors could see in, no one could witness what happened here. I wondered how many of Jace's previous girlfriends had stood in this exact spot, looking at this same fence, realizing they were trapped. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Glenda approaching with a cup of tea. I thought you might like this, she said. It's chamomile. Very soothing. I took the cup but didn't drink from it. Glenda, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. What happened to Valeria Braden? The question hung in the air between us. For just a moment Glenda's mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating flash across her features. I'm sorry. Valeria Braden. Jace's girlfriend before me. What happened to her? I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. She died, I said quietly. Suicide according to the records. Just 3 months before Jace and I met. That's very sad, Glenda said, her voice carefully neutral. But I don't see what it has to do with anything. And Amanda Foster before her. Car accident. And Lisa Park before that. House fire. Glenda's smile never wavered, but her eyes had gone completely cold. You've been doing research, she said. I have. That's exactly the kind of paranoid behavior we're talking about, dear. Digging into things that don't concern you, making connections that don't exist, seeing patterns where there are none. Are there no patterns? None whatsoever. You're seeing what you want to see because you're ill. I took a step closer to her, close enough to see the calculation in her eyes, the complete lack of genuine emotion. What about your husbands, Glenda? What about Elliot Carlos and Antonio Edward? Now her smile did falter just for a second. My husbands died of natural causes. Did they? You're having another episode, she said, her voice getting sharper. Jace, come out here. I heard him moving through the house, his footsteps quick and urgent. What's wrong? He asked as he stepped onto the patio. She's having delusions again, Glenda said. She's making wild accusations about my deceased husbands. Felicia, Jace said, his voice taking on that patient, condescending tone. You need to calm down. I am calm, I said. I'm just asking questions. You're being paranoid again. This is exactly why you need professional help. I looked at both of them standing there, united in their lies, and felt a surge of rage so powerful it almost overwhelmed me. You killed them, I said quietly. You killed Valeria and Amanda and Lisa. You killed your husbands. And now you're planning to kill me. That's enough, Jace said firmly. You're clearly having a psychotic break. Am I? Or am I finally seeing clearly for the first time? We're calling Dr. Justin, Glenda said, pulling out her phone. She needs to be sedated and taken to the facility tonight. No, I said, backing toward the patio door. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are, Jace said, and suddenly his voice was different. Threatening. One way or another you're going to that facility. And if I refuse? Then you'll have an accident, Glenda said matter-of-factly. A tragic accident. Pregnant women can be so unstable, so prone to making poor decisions. Falls downstairs, overdoses, car crashes. These things happen all the time. There was the admission I needed. You're threatening to kill me. I'm stating facts, she said. You're going to disappear, Felicia. Either to a nice, quiet facility where you'll live out your days in medicated bliss, or to a grave. The choice is yours. I reached for the panic button in my pocket, but Jace was faster. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it painfully. I don't think so, he said. Give me whatever you're reaching for. I don't have anything. He twisted harder and I cried out in pain. Give it to me, Felicia. I had no choice. I pulled out the panic button and handed it to him. What is this? Glenda asked, examining the device. Some kind of transmitter, Jace said. She's been recording us. Or worse, Glenda said, her eyes narrowing. She might have called the police. They both looked at me with expressions of cold calculation, and I knew I was in serious trouble. Did you call the police, Felicia? Glenda asked. I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Well, she said with a sigh. I suppose that changes things. We'll have to move to Plan B. What's Plan B? I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. Plan B, Glenda said, pulling a gun from her purse, is that you're going to have a tragic accident tonight. Right here, right now. The gun was small and silver, the kind of weapon a grandmother might keep for protection. But in Glenda's steady hands it looked deadly. Mom, Jace said uncertainly. Are you sure about this? Do we have a choice? She knows too much and now the police might be involved. We have to end this tonight. I looked around desperately, searching for an escape route. But the patio was enclosed, Jace was blocking the door to the house, and Glenda had a gun pointed at my chest. I was trapped. Please, I said, my hand instinctively going to my belly. Think about the baby. Your grandchild. Oh, don't worry about the baby, Glenda said with a smile. I'll take very good care of it after you're gone. I'll raise it properly the way I raised Jace. You're insane. I'm practical. You were never going to be a good mother anyway. Too selfish, too weak. The baby will be better off without you. She raised the gun, pointing it directly at my heart. Goodbye, Felicia. I closed my eyes and waited for the shot. Instead I heard shouting. Police! Drop your weapon! My eyes snapped open to see Detective Santos and 3 other officers bursting through the patio door, guns drawn. Drop the weapon now! Santos shouted again. For a moment Glenda hesitated. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if she could shoot me before the police could stop her. Don't even think about it, Santos said. You're surrounded. Slowly, reluctantly, Glenda lowered the gun. Glenda Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, Santos said, moving forward to handcuff her. Jace Hunter, you're under arrest as an accessory. As the officers led them away, Jace looked back at me one last time. The mask was completely gone now and I could see the hatred in his eyes, the rage at being caught. This isn't over, he said. But it was. Finally it was over. I sank onto one of the patio chairs, my legs shaking with relief and adrenaline. Detective Santos sat down beside me. Are you okay? I think so, I said. How long were you listening? Long enough. We got everything we needed. The threats, the admissions, the gun. They're going away for a very long time. What happens now? Now you get your life back, she said. Your real life. The one they tried to steal from you. I looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. My baby and I were safe. The nightmare was over. And for the first time since this all began, I could imagine a future that didn't include fear. The courtroom was packed the day Glenda Morrison and Jace Hunter were sentenced. I sat in the front row, my 4-month-old daughter sleeping peacefully in my arms, and watched as the judge delivered justice for all the women who couldn't be there to see it themselves. Glenda Morrison, the judge said, his voice grave, you have been found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder and multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Glenda showed no emotion as the sentence was read. She sat straight-backed and dignified, as if she were attending a church service rather than her own condemnation. Jace Hunter, the judge continued, you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, fraud, and domestic abuse. I hereby sentence you to 25 years to life in prison. Jace did react to that. He turned to look at me, his face twisted with rage and hatred. Even now, even after everything, he blamed me for his downfall. I looked back at him calmly, my daughter stirring slightly in my arms, and felt nothing but pity. He'd thrown away everything. His freedom, his future, his chance to know his child. For a woman who had never loved him, who had only seen him as a tool to be used. After the sentencing, Detective Santos found me in the hallway outside the courtroom. How are you feeling? She asked. Free, I said simply. For the first time in months, I feel free. And the baby? I looked down at my daughter, Emma Rose, named after my grandmother, and smiled. She's perfect. Healthy and happy and completely unaware that her father is a monster. Will you tell her someday? When she's old enough to understand. She deserves to know the truth, but she also deserves to know that she's nothing like them. That she's capable of love and kindness and all the things they never were. Detective Santos nodded. The investigation is officially closed. We found evidence linking Glenda to 2 additional murders. Women from other states who had gotten involved with her previous husbands. She's been killing people for over 30 years. 30 years. 3 decades of death and manipulation and destroyed lives. At least it's over now, I said. It is. And Felicia? You should be proud of yourself. What you did took incredible courage. I thought about that as I drove home to the small apartment I'd rented after selling the house. Courage. I supposed it had taken courage, but at the time it had just felt like survival. Like doing whatever it took to protect my child and myself. The apartment was tiny compared to the house Jace and I had shared, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every decision had been made by me alone. It was the first space I'd ever had that was completely my own. I settled Emma in her crib and made myself a cup of tea, then sat by the window looking out at the city lights. 6 months ago I'd been a different person entirely. Naive, trusting, dependent on a man who had never deserved my love. Now I was a mother, a survivor, a woman who had faced down killers and lived to tell about it. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, who was finally back from deployment. Saw the news about the sentencing. How are you holding up? Good, I typed back. Really good. And I meant it. For the first time in my adult life I was truly good. Not because a man loved me, not because I was part of a couple, not because I fit into someone else's idea of what I should be. I was good because I was strong. Because I was independent. Because I had learned that the only person I could truly depend on was myself. Emma stirred in her crib, making the soft sounds that meant she'd be hungry soon. I went to her, lifting her warm, sleepy body into my arms, and felt that familiar surge of fierce protectiveness. It's just you and me, baby girl, I whispered. And that's going to be enough. More than enough. As I fed her, I thought about the future. I'd gone back to work part-time, doing freelance marketing consulting from home. The money wasn't great yet, but it was honest money, earned by my own efforts. I was building something real, something that couldn't be stolen or manipulated or taken away. I thought about dating someday, about maybe finding love again. But not yet. Not for a long time. I needed to be whole on my own before I could risk sharing my life with someone else. And when I did date again, I would be different. Smarter. More careful. I would never again ignore red flags or make excuses for bad behavior. I would never again lose myself in someone else's needs and wants. I would never again be the kind of woman who could be abandoned when she needed love most. Emma finished eating and fell back asleep in my arms. I held her for a long time, watching her peaceful face, marveling at the miracle of her existence. She was the one good thing that had come from my marriage to Jace, the one pure and beautiful result of all that pain and betrayal. You're going to be strong, I told her sleeping form. Stronger than I was. You're going to know your worth, and you're never going to let anyone make you feel small or worthless or dependent. You're going to be everything I should have been from the beginning. Outside, the city hummed with life, people going about their evening routines, couples having dinner, families tucking children into bed. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the darkness that had touched mine. But I was part of that normal world again now. The nightmare was over, the monsters were caged, and I was free to build whatever life